Hi everyone, welcome to The Grind. Today we're going to be talking about the last message for this series on the book of Titus, Right Living. And basically we're talking about right living towards the world. We had guest speaker Freddie Boy, and very insightful, and I think he's a really great communicator. And so we're just gonna take some time to unpack it and what does it look like to be right living towards the world? So first of all, let's talk about the righteousness of Christ. So do you naturally feel like you already have the righteousness of Christ within you? And if not, why?
No, I don't feel that way at all.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because I feel and know that I am not good.
Uh-huh.
I sin, and I always kind of put myself on the throne where God should be. like unforgiveness, bitterness, envy, lust, so on. And I really remember this verse that if we claim to be sinless, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. So no, not at all.
That's interesting, because I think I'm almost following the same example, but it's a different outcome. Because I'd say, I think yes, I already feel it. Because, and I say yes because that's why I feel guilty whenever I still sin. Because I feel that he has given me this clean slate, and here I am ruining it. And I feel every time I sin, I'm decreasing the value of that righteousness. So I think that's why I think I already am living in it. And, I'm just tainting it a little bit more. Yeah.
I mean, first of all, the righteousness of Christ is not something that you can do to earn. It's basically given to us. And, we received this, when Christ died for us on the cross. And so that's why we have this clean slate, right? So the righteousness that we have is not our own, but it's the righteousness of Christ. So, yeah, I think it's almost like, do I feel clean all the time? No, because we do fall into sin, we do make mistakes, and so it's just it just kind of feels like, I mean, sometimes I am dirty. I know I need cleansing all the time. But I think the natural state of my being is I know that I have the righteousness of Christ in me because I have this relationship with the Lord. So I think it's just working out my salvation with fear and trembling. It's what Paul says. And I think it's something that we need to also remember is that there is the righteousness of Christ versus self-righteousness, right? And like I mentioned, righteousness is something that we don't. Righteousness from Christ is something that we don't earn. It's given to us. So, and that's the whole picture of the Pharisees, right? They were just really self-righteous and everything, holier than thou and whatnot. But have you guys have any experience with self-righteous people?
I am a self-righteous.
So how did you display your self-righteousness to the people around you?
There's so much to judge. Oh, you cohabitate, you have sex outside marriage, you support blah 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 blah. You're pregnant outside of marriage. You're a luxurious spender. Do business with questionable methods. So it's people take pride in gambling. Oh wait, mate. I take pride in not gambling.
Oh right, outside people.
Like Mark 6 or horse, whatever.
Yeah.
But then I still lust after riches. Yeah. And then I take pride in not partying till 6 a.m. or something.
Yeah.
Or be promiscuous in my relationships. But then I still lust after bodily pleasures nonetheless. So.
It's quite like an oxymoron. We're basically walking oxymorons. What's the verse? The flesh is weak, but the spirit is willing. Wait.
Yeah, the spirit is willing, the flesh is weak.
Yeah. I was like, bro, yeah.
Yeah, bro.
I think I never really thought of it from my perspective, but I kind of broke it down that what is the contrast of God's righteousness and self-righteousness. And I think the way I define self-righteousness right off the bat is seeing that I'm right, seeing that in my truth that I'm in the right place, which can be completely flawed, right? Because our truth is so skewed. Then I think there's the righteousness of Christ, which I'll be honest, I did search. And actually one thing I liked about a place that was describing Christ's righteousness is active obedience. It's just constant. It's just a constant state of obeying God. And I think that it does make sense that when you're constantly obeying God, that you are in a constant state of righteousness, I feel.
So like you, I also have moments where I judge people too, and I become like holier than thou, and like, oh, my way's the right way, like my God's the right God, and then, you know, in the sense, like, then I bulldoze my views over people, and then like, well, then they don't want to hear anything about Jesus if Jesus has to do with anything like someone like you, right? Yeah, I think it's easy to judge, and I know like I've been that self-righteous person before, and definitely have come off that way to my own sibling. My brother has definitely felt like that before, and I know I need to like back off sometimes. But yeah, I've had my own experience of people who are self-righteous, and you just like, I have no time in the day for these people. They just like make it seem as though they're better than you. And like the truth is like, I mean, yeah, like the way of Christ is better than everyone else. It is like the standard, like the best standard. But then sometimes when we like are so sold into that, sometimes we come off as like, this is the only way, and you kind of like, you know, force it down people's throats. Then people are like, well, okay, cool, but what's that going to do with me, right? And then so it's like, how do we talk, I guess, share like who Jesus is without also bulldozing people as well, like, hey, this is the best way. So I think there's a fine balance.
Yeah, I'm curious, the other self-righteous people that you experience, are they Christians or not, and what kind of things they boast about?
One of them would be Christian in name, and so I think it's just the way they just like, oh, I know better, like, listen to me, that kind of thing. And it's just like, yeah, but then your attitude says otherwise, so I don't really want to like pay attention to that. So yeah, Christian in name. I think that would be one person that does come to mind. And then, like I mentioned before, right, like someone, when they thought about me, they're like, when they were, I guess when someone's like, hey, yeah, do you know Pet? And they're like, oh, her? Isn't she like super holy now? And like, I think I gave that example before, right? So it's like some people might think like I'm too good for them. So it's not that. I think sometimes, I guess, our actions make it seem as though we're too good for people, but then I don't know if you guys have ever faced that
It's
struggle.
like the prettiest girls never get asked out kind of logic.
Yeah.
Never mind.
So, yeah, I don't know if you ever had that experience, like, oh, don't talk to that person. They're just too good, you know, like, so. But, don't like curse in front of that person because that person's a Christian. I mean, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I've had experience with people like that. So it's like, cool. Yeah. So we are called to be in this world, yet not to be of this world. So what does it mean for us to both not love the world yet still be in the world? And also, like, why would it be personally difficult to do both at the same time?
I think the plain answer is that, you know, God placed us on this earth to influence the people, to like enrich and like educate the people. And so I think that's what it means for us to be of the world, and for us to love the world is like, I think that's just the way of saying, like, you know, pursuing the earthly standard, you know, what is true happiness to the world, what is true freedom, you know. I think when you pursue those, that is you loving the world. And I think the reason why it could be a challenge is because, you know, the saying, you are what you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And seeing how the majority of what's around us is the earthly standard, you know. It's and I think on top of that is that, you know, God's way is the better way and obviously the more beneficial. But I think the earth way is just much more tempting and much more easier. No, not easier. I'd say it's easy, but it's much tempting. Yeah. So I guess, long story short, be the influencer, not be influenced. Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about being influenced, I just watched a YouTube video. Again, the algorithms is working. About a pastor wearing rainbow-colored ribbons and then wearing makeup and then coming out at the pulpit of being gay and drag.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah.
Wow. And his sermon, rather than talk about God's word, is about how he is advocating for inclusive community and all that. And thank you for the support from the elders and the congregation, and woo! And to me, I think it is not to fully support and engage in the word values and behaviors while actively knowing what is going on.
Yeah.
And also living in this world, being bound by its limitation and the systems.
Yeah. Because, like, the reality is that we live in this world, and yes, it's complicated. There's a lot of, like, you know, gray areas. There's a lot of people, like, basically in the Book of Judges, everyone's doing what is right in their own eyes. You've got, like, people who, like, I was talking to someone, and, you know, she's working in America, and basically she's like, yeah, kids, they just want to be called by whatever pronouns, and you have to abide by them. And some of them want to be referred to as, like, an animal. So it's like, well, how do you handle all of that? And so it is definitely a challenge to be in this world but not of this world. Especially, like, I think a lot of us, our nature is to want to be accepted by society. I mean, that's how a lot of us are wired, right? And so we want to conform and you know, not be too, like, stand outy or whatever. I mean, there are people who, like, want to stand out and they do their own thing to stand out, but I'm saying, like, essentially we still deep down we want to find acceptance. So, and
that reminds me of the elevator experiment. Like, you have all people around the target person, and they just face the wall. All at the same time, and the target person is so confused to whether he faced the door or, like, faced the back like everyone else. And eventually, I think most of the people will just follow the crowd.
Yeah, that's the elevator experiment. I remember reading about that or studying it. And then also you've seen those Japanese videos on YouTube where you have one person walking and then suddenly a group of people running towards you. Then the person's like turning around, like, I'm running too, but they have no idea what they're running from. So I think people can be conformed by the world if you don't stand, you know, true to what you know. Like, I think, like, if, for example, if the person knows, like, there's absolutely nothing wrong, maybe they'll still keep walking. But yeah, we're called to set the culture. We're called to be not the thermometer, but we're called to be the thermostat, right? To set set the temperature of the culture. So yeah. So basically it means for us to be the salt and the light of the world. So for you guys, what does that look like for you?
Well, when everything is dark, you become the light.
How about, like,
it's like doing something good when everyone else is doing something different and wrong, I would say.
I guess not letting your values be compromised.
Yeah.
Your morals be compromised.
I can think of an example of being light as, like, you still commit to proclaiming about Jesus, proclaiming there is absolute truth rather than just relative truth. And then even if there's a possibility of prosecution or the mainstream culture opposes Christianity, opposes Jesus, you still believe it and act it out. Yeah. So just in the Paris Olympics happening right now, I think there's a rumor that a server is being threatened by the Olympic Committee to remove the Jesus image on his board.
Oh, really?
Otherwise, he'll be disqualified.
Oh, I did not know about that one.
Yeah, that is very difficult. To be salt and light.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of, like, the Paris Olympics, I think there was a recent thing about the opening ceremony and how they believed that it was a mockery of the Last Supper, and then you've got people obviously really outrageous about it. Then I read another article of how the art director was like, well, actually, it's supposed to be Dionysus who shows up to the pagan festival of, like, you know, foods and stuff like that. So the fact that it resembles the Last Supper was not its intention. But I'm like, but then it's really too similar. So it's just like, yeah. Then this is where righteousness and self-righteous, like, you know, comes up, right? Like, what's the balance of, like, standing up for what is true versus, like, condemning them and be like, how can they do that, and and hate on them. And I think what was really interesting was I was looking on Facebook, and Chris Valentin was writing that how he wanted to do like a post, like saying I'm going to boycott the Olympics and like da 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 da, and it was going against them. But as he prepared like a post as for to put up, he didn't feel the anointing on the post. And so he basically reverted to like, what would Jesus do? Jesus would still love. Jesus would still, not be like condemn them. He would be there for them. And also for him, he said like boycotting the games would be kind of like, kind of giving up on the athletes who spent all that time to, compete for these games the past 4 years. So yeah, so I think he didn't like bash them or anything like that. So.
And your boycotting probably doesn't mean anything.
Exactly, unless you get the entire world to boycott, which is not gonna happen. So, yeah, so I think that's where righteousness versus self-righteous comes in. You could be holier than thou and just like say like, hey, this is wrong, you shouldn't have done that. But then, so I guess that's where also being salt and light is like, what would a person who shows the love of Jesus do in the situation? And like, there's righteous anger, like, hey, how can you mock like such a sacred moment? But then also, how do you show love to those who do not know what they're doing as well? So speaking of which, like, there are definitely a lot of different things that are happening in the world. And I think, different things that people agree on, disagree on. So, I mean, first of all, it's like, how should we pray about the current events in the world? And also think about, like, how are you dealing with disagreement about certain issues?
Yourself, I don't really know. Maybe just... His will be done.
His will be done.
Yeah.
His kingdom come. Our benediction. Just pray our benediction every single time.
Yeah. Pray for wisdom for the leaders, and then peace for us, the citizens. I also heard a prayer, but I don't know whether it's biblical or not.
What?
It's pray for power to do what I can. And to accept what I cannot.
Oh, it's the serenity prayer.
Yeah, and the wisdom to differentiate.
Yeah. It's basically the prayer that's also prayed in like alcohol, the AA meetings as well, that they use because it's a guide for them. I remember reading about that as well. I think one of the hot topics that people, at least within the Christian community, there's a huge divide is basically the war in Hamas versus Israel. You've got like the Israelites, but people's like, Israel's God's chosen people, they can do no wrong, and then people's like, yeah, but Hamas, the reason why they're retaliating is the Israelites were also like being really like evil as well, etc., etc. And so I think initially people were like, oh, God's, needs to protect the Israelites. Then over the course of the year actually, since I think October or whatever it was, then you can see actually Israel has made some really shady moves as well. But then you still have your diehards who's like, no, God is still with the Israelites. So it's like, how do you balance disagreement with that? How do you found yourself in that kind of conversations with people?
I don't know. That reminds me of 2019.
Oh, with the...
Yeah. It's like, some people have done evil things, and then the other side, you may have the more high ground to retaliate, but then I find that usually the retaliation has some shady stuff as well. Yeah.
I think like in every situation, it's there are always two sides to the story, and different angles that you can look at it. I think if you play up like on one angle, you see that one side is like more evil than the other. And we go back to 2019. There was a lot of disagreement in terms of how things should have played out or should not have played out. And I think there has been, friendships broken, people like not wanting to be part of a church or not or whatever based on a difference in views. And I know I had obviously a disagreeing view with someone about like just should the church be open to people who are pro-police, because then they're like, how can the church support like brutality, But then I like to go back to what Pastor Red said, that a church should be a safe place for anyone, regardless of what you believe, who is right or whatever. It's a place where you can come to know more about God. So it doesn't matter like where you stand.
Yeah. I think for me is that I think my perspective is a bit more niche. It's that don't just focus what's on the surface. I feel is to try and see if God reveals what the enemy is doing, and then I feel what we should do is kind of enable the angels to counter whatever the devil's trying to doing. Yeah. Like for example, if we're talking about 2019, right? Like I remember we had a small youth group where we went up to the top of the mountain to pray for Hong Kong. Yeah. And I think we weren't even praying for anything political. We were more praying, against any like hatred and fear and anxiety,
Like the principalities.
Exactly. Yeah. Our battle is not against flesh and blood.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, people are like, oh, freedom, democracy. I think that's a lot of things that people are, if you boil down to every single post that you read about like the war, about like Ukraine versus Russia, like, Israel versus Hamas, I think it's all about like freedom to pursue what they want. And so I think that's a hot topic, right? Like, how should Christians view democracy and personal freedom without taking extreme positions on either end?
I think on one end, it is good to have non-dictatorship government.
Yeah.
And personal freedom, but to a certain extent. And on the other hand, too much personal freedom, I think you become sinful and does not align to the commandments.
Yeah.
Such as love God with all your heart and soul, and love your neighbors as yourselves. So I think as Christians, we should recognize all human constructs have flaws.
Yeah.
and that we could give thanks regardless of the situation.
Yeah.
Because nothing is guaranteed or entitled for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I go back to the Bible verse, Galatians 5:1, like, it is for freedom Christ has set us free, stand firm therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. Now, some people can use that verse out of context and be like, yeah, we've been set free, so we can do whatever we want. And then, so you don't tell me what to do. And that's just like the extreme position. It's like, yeah, you've been set free, not to, like, you're no longer slaves to sin. You're now, like, in a sense, slaves to righteousness. So what does it look like to live a righteous life in this world? And yes, democracy, yes, freedom, and yes, like, we shouldn't be under any dictatorship. But then also, actually, if you're so extreme on the other end, technically, is there such thing? Is it safe to say there's a freedom dictator? Like, you have the freedom to do this, now do it. But I don't want to. No, you have the freedom to do it. Go do it. But I don't know. And then so it's like, there's that, right? Like, sometimes you feel as though you have to have a stance about something.
Tell me an opinion that you have about something. Just one opinion that you have about anything at all. Just share an opinion. Anything. Share an opinion. Share an opinion. Anything. Just one opinion. That's all I'm asking. Share one opinion right now. Share. I don't have an opinion.
If you don't say something, that means you're not supporting freedom, that kind of thing. But what if I am supporting freedom? I just have nothing to say at the moment. Then am I seen as like being against? So there's also that other extreme too.
And in Titus and Romans, they talk about honoring your government or authorities. But then people will say, I'll honor them as long as they are beneficial to me, or unless they are good.
So it's very conditional.
Yeah, this concept of freedom is very touchy, I feel. I like to believe that, God gave us free will, and that was a gift. And for me to deny someone's free will is me kind of like trying to reject God's gift on that person. So I feel that's why it's such a, I guess, like as we're saying, like it's kind of like a virtue that too much is bad and too little is bad. You need to find that sweet spot of it.
Sweet spot.
Then and so people can believe, they have the freedom to believe and say whatever they want. And I guess, like some people have too much freedom that it becomes self-harmful. And I think we're here to, and we have the freedom to like help them. But I think the first condition is that they want to receive help in the first place before we can do anything. So I think in the sense of like, how to help the world and being an influence, can only be an influence to those who allow it, I guess.
Yeah. So I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, like what we were saying is like praying the benediction, let heaven come, His will be done. And I think that's the best way to deal with things sometimes is like literally trusting the Lord's sovereignty that, I mean, yeah, we may not understand the pieces that's in play. Like maybe God has this huge mind map of like, you know, pieces in action and that we will never, ever understand. But I think it's like, we just got to trust that, hey, the Lord is sovereign and we can pray for His will to be done in our lives. And in the meantime, until He comes, is to be the salt and the light and to basically be a representation of His goodness. So and so I guess that's how it looks like to live right towards the world. Yeah, we can't control what the world does or you know, the situations, the trends, the wars, the, you know, what people say or do, but I think we can control how we respond to what the world throws at us. So yeah, I think it's something that we constantly need to ask God for wisdom and discernment. So hence, give us the serenity and the wisdom and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Cool. Well, that's that for today. Praying that you had a awesome and fruitful time discussing, you know, the book of Titus with your small groups as well. And and then continue to read Titus. I believe that there's a lot that God has in store for you. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you at the next grind. Bye. Hey.